Welcome to my POL. My name is Hanna Cochran. I'm a ninth grader in the Humanities Academy. A lot of people have switched around between projects, uncertain of what they really wanted to do. But since the beginning of the year, I have been doing something really meaningful to me, and I've carried it out all the way up until now. I had a small icebreakers project I was doing with a classmate, but that didn't initiate as much change as we wanted. So then I chose to write a book. I'd already started one about an elf in a made up world, and was 70 pages into that when I started fresh with something a little bit more relatable to me and readers. I have completed my first draft of my realistic fiction slash romance at 100-ish stock pages. A lot of people probably think that writing a novel and publishing it before even the end of high school is one of those big dreams kids can have, but never have the patience or time or skill to do. But although I have yet to publish my book, I've basically completed it and proved to those people, as well as myself, that it can be done. The reason I chose this project is because I absolutely love writing. I love a ton of things: music, history, hiking, baking on stormy days, etc. But with writing, I can translate all of that onto the page to spread my love and experiences to others, and relive all my favorite things in texts. Also, in truth, writing a book at the beginning of the year seemed like a good personal project that I could slip by with, without talking to others too much or reaching out were I to do a community type project. But especially now in the editing phase, I realize it's a collaborative effort, and has been the entire time. Sometimes I'll run sentences or ideas past my sister, or I'll start ranting about England and the Norman conquest, or random philosophical factors of my book. Honestly, as time consuming as it's been a really fun year. So even though I didn't start with a huge vision in mind, I've learned so much from writing this book, and I dream one day it will be on the shelf for you to read. And next we have the first untitled poem of my book that opens it up. And the rest of my book is kind of follows the same idea. It's multimedia with poetry and quotation or quotes from songs and also just traditional chapters. So, how did I do it? The design thinking process, for those who aren't familiar with it, is to empathize, define, ideate, make a prototype, and test. During each step, we reflect on our progress as well. To empathize in my project, it wasn't going out and talking to a ton of people to understand their sides of the story, as I might for more of a community-based project. But I did do a lot of listening to people talk about their life, and trying to observe people's actions or opinions to get a well-rounded scope on the world and inspire the different characters in my book. Second, I defined what my book was actually about, although the empathize step overlaps with this as well. I figured out how I envisioned my book, the plot, etc. Later on, revisiting this again, I decided I would make each chapter title a song that encompassed the mood of the chapter based on my main character's love of music, as well as my own. I also wrote character bios and random notes for scene ideas on post-its and the orange journal on the screen. A timeline for my plot came together as well. Now I have a draft of my book, and I'm testing it on my friends and family to gain feedback and their feelings from reading it. The rest of the process is continuously in play. So here are the few album covers for my playlist of chapters. Maybe somebody recognizes some of them. So anyway, from Feedback Night, as part of the Humanities Academy, I was made aware that I should make sure my dialogue isn't overthought, so it remains realistic. I will talk more on this later, but such feedback helped me be reflective, since I realize people will perceive the story differently depending on who they are, and I have to be intentional to get my point across how I want it. Other than that, I didn't gain a whole lot of advice that night. It was mainly stuff on the formatting of my book. But I found inspiration from watching a Project for Impact webinar a few weeks later, where various humanities groups from Princeton reviewed their projects. Although none of them were related to my novel, I pulled a lot of messages that could be useful to me, such as society is a whole bunch of different ideologies. I always knew I wanted a strong message to reach my readers, and this webinar helped me phrase that theme better. Next, habits of mind. These are things we've improved on mentally throughout our processes. While I was preparing this, I thought, I don't really want the world to know my sexuality. I can just slide by without mentioning anything, which would be great, except that would mean leaving out a large part of the growth I've done. And since the whole point of this book is to be honest and confident in yourself, as well as to look past stereotypes and our narrow definitions of normal, I must disclose that I am bisexual. And I think I've done a great job growing as that person. With this in mind, my patience and maturity have improved recently. And before that, my confidence, intrinsic motivation, resourcefulness, reflectiveness, and honesty. Also, here's a quick note on the plot of my novel so you can picture it better. My book displays many inner workings of the mind of my main character, Teresa State, who is 15. She discovers her love for her best friend, Poet Montero, over the course of COVID and afterwards. Poet is a popular girl by Teresa's perception, whereas Terry is not, so I think it is very romantic and significant when they get together, as they also help to convey many of the themes I want to get across. I also depict a prideful, accepting LGBTQ plus community with this book, with Terry and her lunch table friend group as I've come to call them. I hope any eventual readers in said community and beyond feel accepted and inspired. And a quick note is that the name Poet is still in question. I don't know if I'll keep it. And also, the time span of COVID in this book is fictional since it ends much sooner than it obviously has in real life. So here's how I know I learned and improved. Since I'm always learning, the habit of mind I've seen most recently improved is that I've been less worried that I don't always know the answers or how things will turn out, which I used to stress a lot about. This falls under patience and maturity. For instance, in track, our coach never tells us all of the information about our lineup or our race times or something, but we end up figuring it out after all. This used to drive me crazy, the not knowing, like not knowing when an assignment is due, not knowing what the weather is for the next few days, not knowing the outcome of something stressful that you had to do. But in being more accepting of my identity as I progress through my project, I know that not everything is an exact science. My family's motto comes to mind as well. Things have a way of working out. This has also been especially true during COVID because no one really knew anything at first, but we've all worked through the confusion and adapted to our present situation. Next, in the beginning of the year, I improved in confidence and honesty. Now I have a direction for my book, too, which I didn't begin with. And also in life, I came out to my family and friends, which I feel good about. That was a weight lifted off my shoulders. Lately, my reflectiveness and resourcefulness have improved. I always consider myself to have a lot of both, but now I'm taking into account how other people will read my book and what they will get from it or understand, instead of just reflecting on my own actions. I also try to understand the emotions of the characters I'm writing, because a lot of the time I don't agree with them or haven't lived through what they have. Also, in getting feedback, I learned I can actually be very outreaching, which was surprising. I was super nervous to reach out for editing help because I didn't want to intrude on people's busy schedules, but as always, my friends, family, and teachers are here to help. Though I did practice patience again from this process, since a lot of the people helping me edit aren't really working at the goal pace I envisioned, though it may be a little ambitious. Lastly, my intrinsic motivation has improved by a schedule I've kept myself to most nights. Especially now in the spring, I have track, so working at night after dinner is a good quiet time to work. Just the act of writing, whether it's a monologue or poem or chapter, is really self-motivated in general, and I feel I've been very productive. I've seen this carried over to other things I do, like track and biking to school, all of which I never really want to do but end up enjoying anyway. They are also things only I can push myself to do, like writing a book. So I think this has been a very successful year for me, and thanks for listening.